going into my basketball. Every time I rock, man, this is how we rap and raw. Peace to my man, now we got the camera out. Every time I spit it, cross over the...
All right. Hello, everyone. This is Josh, also known as Yashu. You're tuning into another episode of TLOY Talks, episode 45. And, you could stream it, like listen it to on all platforms, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Buzzsprout. But I already explained it a lot, like in the past episodes too. And, let's get it started right here and all that, So we have like one legendary guest like in the building today, who's making a name for herself, like within her career in music and within acting too, with well-known singles like Little Demon, Weak in the Knees, If I Follow, Go Slow, Overtime. Who's been acting and modeling all her like life in that sense too, with roles in Poser and in Drowning, and also the daughter of a well-known lead singer of a Canadian R&B group that's won multiple Junos, Jack Soul. We have Beauty in the Riot here in the pod today. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Nah, like it was a pleasure. Like it's dope to have you on and all that too. And like, we were talking about like how I managed to like get to know you like a little bit more. And it was like from that IG post that I kind of created, well, YouTube post that I kind of created more too. And, just like timelining your father's like music along with like other people's music, within the Juno Award sense too. And then did more research, listened to the music and, just kind of got it from there and all that. And like, just like researching all these like interviews and all this like other content too. It's interesting to see like your story and like everything else too. And I know that everyone knows like your father's like story for a bit too. Hayden Neil, correct?
Yes, you're correct.
So like now it's like more so I want to like figure out like more of your story and like let everyone like know more about like you in that sense too, because we can only see it from one person's perspective, but we don't see it like in another person's perspective, like the person that's kind of making it on their own and all that. And I'm open to like sharing it like right here today, and definitely get it started and all that.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, no, most definitely. So, just taking it back in. So, you grew up in Guelph and Toronto, correct?
Yeah, I grew up back and forth between the two.
True. So, I know like usually for some people too, like I always ask like the neighborhoods and all that too. So, like, where did you grow up like in those areas, and like what was like the environment like for you as like a kid at that time?
Guelph, I'm a huge animal lover. Anyone who knows me knows I love animals and wildlife. So in Guelph, the area I grew up in, I would also often go to like the creek or like go, and I'd come home with like baby ducks, baby birds. Like I used to come home bringing animals home all the time. So that was kind of my upbringing in Guelph. It was a rude awakening for me when I moved to Toronto and found out like I couldn't go venture by myself anymore because it's the big city and not as safe. So we moved around a lot. I spent a lot of my time in Toronto in the beaches area is where we kind of ended up. My parents both just thought it was like a really good neighborhood for kids. So that's where I spent a lot of my time in Toronto. In Guelph, it was like, I don't even know what the neighborhood was called because I'm so young, but that was like my home base. All my friends lived a block over from each other, and it was like hometown kind of feel at Guelph.
Nah, most definitely. And I mean Guelph, like it's home to like, University of Guelph and all that. They have like a big like farming like environment too, like with a lot of farms, a lot of like livestock around in the area too, and just like a lot of like interesting stuff too, like some concerts here and there too. And the beaches area too, with the jazz festival too, it would probably be like an amazing experience too. You get to see like Woodbine Beach, and it's also like dope vibes as well too. So even in those areas too, like were they big for music at the time growing up?
I wouldn't say so. Like I know that Jazz Fest obviously happens, but because music was already happening in my household, I didn't really take in the Jazz Fest as something that contributed to me specifically wanting to do music. I think that both of those neighborhoods have a lot of people in the arts in them. Like I think the beaches specifically, a lot of people's parents are into film or music, but I don't think the area really was what did it for me. I think it was more like my household that really honed in on my music.
No, 100% too. And I mean, we'll get like more like further like into that too, and like, but like getting into your like story as well too. Like everyone like knows like more so of your father's story and all that too. But like with you, like aside from those like times like being around like family and all that, like what were you like as a kid, like to like young adulthood, like finding out like your main character arc, like finding out like your story and everything else too, like what did you try to figure out like at that time?
Growing up, wow, that's kind of a hard question. I think because I'm an only child, I kind of had the opposite of the only child syndrome, where like I'm very like caring. I'd say like I just really want to be around people. Even though I can be solo, like as a kid, I really just wanted to be in other people's houses, like people who had lots of family or lots of siblings and like sibling rivalries and stuff. Like I always found that stuff really interesting growing up because I didn't have that at home.
Yeah.
So I kind of liked kind of going to my friends' houses and just with a huge family.
Yeah.
In terms of like my own story, like I said, I loved animals. So I was in my head, I was on the path to be a vet growing up for a very long time. Music was more of an accident. How music happened, it really changed. But growing up, I also used to make raps with my dad and play at like the talent shows from grade 2, 3, 4, like really young. Raps about my teachers and stuff like that. We used to make songs together growing up. So I didn't really take in how much that actually contributed to who I am today as an adult. Sometimes we look back at things we did as children and we realize how much it actually shaped what we love as adults. So it's more recently I've realized that probably had a huge impact on what I'm doing today.
Nah, 100% too. And you know, like getting the like idea of art too. So like when you decided to take even like with music and art seriously, like did it like hone into going to like a different school that kind of like specialized it, like an art school, or like did you felt like, you know, like there were like other resources at that time that kind of like helped you out more in honing into your music and all that?
So I went to a regular high school for high school. I went to Malvern in the Beaches. And I came home one day and no knock to my Malvern friends because a lot of them went there. But I just said to my parents, like, everyone's hobbies is drinking and like who they're kissing on the weekend. And like I was like, this isn't the school for me, because I just felt like people didn't have hobbies. And I know that's part of just like the generic of high school, but I really wanted to go somewhere where I felt like made more sense for me. So I ended up going to Rosedale, which was an art school. And the minute my dad went through the gates, he just loved, like he was like, this is an awesome environment for high school. And so I think, I don't know if it was music specifically. I was actually very, very shy to sing for a huge number of years. So even though I took vocal, I would be the kid that's like sitting beside someone kind of singing to themselves. Like I was never really that confident in my music or singing. And I think that's because my dad was so good that it kind of was the opposite effect where I'm like, I don't even want to be compared to his greatness. But I loved dance and I loved acting. And that was like, you know, drama and theater is really what I loved in that school, and just the environment of just being able to be free to be yourself. No one cared what people wore. No one cared about like any of that. It was just like, we're all here for art and just, and I think even to this day, that's like one of the best schools I would recommend for any kid who wants to be like in an art high school or art environment.
Yeah, no, most definitely too. Because like with art schools, like I feel like with a lot of people, like there is like more of a creative like element to it. Like even with alternative schools too. Like when you look at an alternative like high school like in Toronto, or like an alternative art school in Toronto versus like a regular like school, it's more so like the foundation on what they could provide too. Like I actually went to Central Commerce in like the early 2010s and all that too. So they also had like an arts focus as well too. So they would try their best to accommodate to people who have that creative element while allowing other students to like flourish like in their own lane as well too. So, and even like in that experience, you know, from like Malvern like versus like Rosedale, like what were like some differences that you did like kind of notice like during those times?
Again, the hobbies. So just like hobbies being a cool thing, just being able to be like, yeah, I actually can't do that on Thursday because I have dance class, or, you know, I'm gearing up to do this, and that being more embraced. I think that a lot of teenagers with any sort of hobby that's not like the most generic ones are overlooked in a lot of school systems, but I feel like it was really embraced. And again, the idea, like you could, and I'm not even exaggerating, you could wear like a paper bag to Rosedale and no one would care. Like it was just, that was just something that I think no one cared what sneakers you had. No one cared any of that. It was, I think that was a huge, improvement to, you know, the way that high schools normally is. And I feel like the teachers, I'll say this to this day because I have some of them on Facebook, the teachers treated us like little adults. Like instead of like, you know, the kids are in the way or the kids in the hallway, they really like listened to us. They really wanted to improve on things. And I think that also made a huge difference in the community of that school. That school, I believe, wasn't an art school originally. It was actually going to close down because they didn't have enough people. And then the principal, Mr. Sketchley, I think he's still there, actually. He's just like, let's try and make it an art school. And so that worked. And it wasn't a lot of art schools you have to audition to get in. You didn't audition for Rosedale. So that also made it a more of a level playing field where there wasn't this, because some art schools can be snobby. We've all seen the,
Yeah.
the dance movies
Yeah.
and all that kind of that jazz. But that was a sort of a school where it didn't matter what level you were at, as long as you were there and you loved art, or there was something that you liked that was artistic. Everyone just kind of fit together, which I think is very different than the school I went to before. And even though I'm a chatty Cathy and I had friends in that school, I just didn't feel like it was right for me. Like, I just felt like I had more to offer and ways to grow that it wasn't really allowing me to. So that's part of the reason I switched.
Nah, 100% too. And yeah, I think I'll definitely like agree on that as well too. And just like even getting back onto topic right now. So growing up as like the daughter of a well-known Canadian R&B singer-songwriter musician, Hayden Neal of Jack Soul, like Juno, I think like 2-time or 3-time like Juno award winning, or
It's 3 or 4. I don't know.
Ah,
I don't know the stats of my
true.
pops, but it's 3 or 4. Yeah.
True, no, most definitely. So like, what was like that life like compared to other childhood friends who weren't like immersed in that lifestyle? Would you say that there were like sacrifices or changes you had to like live during that time of his fame, or was it like very like regular like in that sense?
My mom's also in film, so my parents were both in the arts, and I would say a couple of things that I would say are interesting of growing up his daughter is everyone, as soon as Much Music hit and the single Can't Stop was everywhere, everyone just thought we were rich. Like, it was just an assumption that we had all this money. And my parents had me quite young and were artists. So, Canadian artists,
Yeah.
so we know that's not the case. So I remember coming home one day and just saying, like, Dad, everyone said things were rich because you're in Much Music. And he's like, just tell them we're rich with love, honey. Like, and that was something that stood out to me, was the perception of what our lives were like versus the reality. I think, especially as a kid, was very different. I wouldn't say I had a crazy different childhood because they never made it seem that way. Like, yes, I got to meet Nelly Furtado while she was making I'm Like a Bird and while she was making that whole album in LA. But as a kid, first of all, she hadn't blown up yet. So she was just like someone my dad knew and was, close to. But I definitely had cool experiences going to concerts and shows and meeting certain people. But because my dad was so normal, in the sense that he made sure I did my homework. He was on me about, my marks and that kind of stuff. I never felt like my childhood there was sacrifices per se. One of the most telling things about who my dad was as a person growing up is he had said to me, he knew kind of the fame part was coming, and he just said, it's going to get really busy the next couple of years. If it ever becomes too much, I'll quit and I'll just songwrite for you. Like, if it becomes too much where it's like an issue. And looking back on that now, it's like, to know that someone had their dream and it was taking off, but they cared more about making sure that their daughter felt stable and felt comfortable. Like, that's still like a huge memory, like a core memory of mine. So I don't think my childhood per se was, totally different. I definitely went on the road and went on tour as a kid, but I didn't even think it was that glamorous or different. You know what I mean? Because I was just in a van with a bunch of the guys from the band. Like, it didn't really click in. Now looking back, I definitely think my childhood was awesome. But
no, most definitely, because I know like at that time, being like a daughter or like a son of like a well-known musician, especially like in the Canadian music industry too, where it's still trying to grow. Like, it can only go as like far as it can be. So like, you're going all over Canada to theater cities like in Saskatchewan or like in Manitoba or in British Columbia or in Quebec, and like that's kind of like the routing from there. Alberta as well too, and then going to the Junos or going to like Much Music and all that too. So it's only as like far as like you could like go in that sense too. So even if it may be like as like interesting too, like in some cases I feel like with kids within like kids from like Canadian musicians versus like kids from like American musicians, it's a total different like contrast to the style that they live in too, because Alabama Barker is like living in a mansion, like singing on to like a lot of stuff on TikTok, whereas for the people like from Canada, it's a whole different aspect, so
yeah, the scenes are very different. And even now, like, I would argue now we're becoming more Americanized in the sense of like our music scene and our film scene, everything's just kind of blowing up, especially Toronto right now is like the hot spot, right? So I think that now maybe things would be a little different, but even celebrities have said for years they love coming to Canada because we don't have that culture where we're going to chase you down the street.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that hopefully, knock on wood, that we don't get there, because I think that
Yeah.
that's kind of part of the reason I didn't have anything crazy. I definitely had a time where my dad had to sign a bunch of autographs, and he would pretend he wasn't a musician. He would be like, "I'm Joe, I'm the plumber," because he didn't want to sit there, because he's like, "I just want to spend this time with my daughter," kind of thing. So
100%,
I definitely had some moments like that, but nothing compared to what it is over
like,
there. Just
no paparazzi or like nothing like that.
nothing crazy.
True.
Nothing crazy.
Nah, 100%. I mean, aside from your family, like being immersed like in that arts, like what was like your first introduction to music and acting, and what were like some artists or sounds like like aside from your family that you listened to throughout your life?
Wow. So introduction to music was definitely my dad. Just growing up, like my parents listened to everything, like from Sade to Portishead to Motown. Like there was just so many different types of music being played, especially at that time being on a label, because you'd get all the CDs, And so I used to listen to everything, like still to this day I do. I listen to country, I listen to Tool, I like just everything. So growing up with music was my dad. We started writing and making songs when I was pretty young, and just that was like just something fun to do. Acting, I don't really know how I got into acting. I was thinking about that earlier. I always liked it, and going to Rosedale really like gave me a better experience. We did an on-camera project, and my teacher had just said to me, like, this is for you, like as soon as she saw it. And I was used to doing the theater stuff, so that kind of pushed me more into wanting to do more acting outside of school and just taking it a little more seriously. So I think that's how I got into acting.
No,
But,
most
yeah.
definitely. What was like the first CD that you bought, like with your own money, like at that
Oh
time?
my
like-
gosh. All right. Well, we're getting into the good stuff. The first CD I ever bought with my own money, like literally loonies and toonies, and I think I was in grade 2 or something, was Hanson's Mbop. That album from, I think it's called Middle of Nowhere or something. I think it's called that. I was really into the Hansons, and I have no shame about that. That was my first CD that I ever bought.
True. I think mine. I think it was Life After. Not Life After Death. Ready to Die by Notorious B.I.G. and all that. And like I was like just kind of
Wow.
like crazy into Biggie. But the surprising part is that was like back in 2013 actually, because I didn't really discover like music like immensely like until that time too. Like I know of other people too, like they kind of like immersed it more like earlier on and all that too. So I don't know, like around that time, this is like what, early 2000s, late 90s or
For my CD?
Yeah.
Oh, it's had to be like, that's like the 90s, I
shoot,
think.
shoot.
Yeah.
No,
I'm trying to remember. I'm like, how old am I? But yeah, it was the 90s.
not true. Nah, most definitely. And what inspired you to become like a singer-songwriter and like artist on your own, and taking your craft seriously and like not trying to follow footsteps, but like doing your best to take care of that legacy and all that?
I appreciate you putting it like that. Sorry, you have to re-ask me the question, because I was like, that was so nicely put that I forgot the first part you asked me.
It was like what inspired you to like become like a singer-songwriter and artist?
Oh, okay. To be honest, I started doing it for fun. A friend of mine, Dalmar, who's actually doing really well in the acting world now. He was just in Lucky Girl, I believe it's called, with Mila Kunis, and just doing really well. He was playing guitar, and I just started kind of writing with him, like singing for fun. We made a couple songs. Also, Classified played a show at my old work, which was the Docks, which I think is Rebel now, I believe. And he played our Christmas event, and I was like rocking out at the front. He ended up going backstage and sort of meeting a couple people that he's friends with. And one of them was named Spesh K, who's a rapper from the East Coast. And he was the first person who ever recorded me. He had me singing like hooks on raps. And at the time I was so shy that he had to turn off all the lights, leave his own house, press record. And that's the only way I could record, because I was just super shy. So when I first started doing it, it was really like almost like a happy accident. Like I was doing it for fun because I liked to, but I was very, very like very shy. So it's kind of crazy to think that now I'm taking it so seriously. And that switch, I used to go by Yasmin Soul, and that switch happened when I switched my name to Beauty in the Riot and rebranded. And I just started taking it more seriously, and I had had a lot happen in my life, and that's kind of why I ended up switching and taking it the direction I've taken it now.
Definitely. And I know, like, taking like seriously and like not like, not like being like a shadow like of your father, but like providing like that legacy to keep his name alive. Like, I know at times like you're trying to figure out like what's like the best way too. So like even in that in that sense, like how did you try to like figure out like from there to kind of make like that lane for you and all that?
I honestly never even thought about that as something I had to do as an artist. It's almost the opposite, where I was like, I don't want to do this because I don't want people to think I'm trying to like ride his coattails, because I really wanted to do my own thing and not be compared, not because I love my dad. My dad's like the best father I could have asked for in a million years, but not be compared in the music sense, because he's such a beast vocally that I was always like afraid that people were going to expect that from me. But then someone told me, like, your parents work so hard to open these doors, you have to walk through them. And I just kind of started to realize with just growing up, like, I'm always going to be his daughter, but I still can do my own thing. You know what I mean? And I think that takes time just to grow up and learn. I've never thought about it as, okay, I have to do music because I have to continue his legacy. I think his legacy is well established in a lot of ways. And I don't think I need to do anything to like further it, besides maybe document some things that I definitely think need to be documented. I'll say that here first and foremost.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I don't worry about it for me as a musician. I think they're totally separate things. And I think anytime his name is brought up with me in music, I'm just happy his name is still being mentioned and that he's still getting the light he deserves. But I don't think I have to specifically carry the weight of like bringing his legacy, because he already did so much while he was here.
100%. And, just getting back onto like track right now, what artists or genres like were you like mainly like influenced by, and which artists would you like to work with someday musically that you would like to work with or that you haven't worked with yet?
Influenced by is everyone. There's so many. Amy Winehouse, Erykah Badu, Lauryn Hill, Corinne Bailey Rae. I mean, even now, like there's some of the new artists. Jessie Murph is a huge influence of mine, and I don't think enough people know about her, but they will soon. She just released a song with Diplo like last Friday. In terms of work with, that's hard. Jessie Reyez is definitely up there on my list. A huge reason is just because she sings in a different cadence, which I do as well. And I think that when you find your own voice, it takes a minute for people to either they're like it or they're gonna hate it. And I think that she really inspired me in a lot of ways, where it's like she just did her own thing. And still to this day, people like I either hate it or I love it, but she's so authentic to herself. And I would love to work with her. So she's definitely one. And Jessie Murphy I mentioned earlier as well.
Yeah, like when I was like listening to the music for a bit too, like it kind of had that same like sound like Jessie Reyez. There was like another artist too that kind of reminded me like similar from here. I don't know if you know like an artist by like the name of like Luke Calla and all that.
I don't know.
Yeah. So she kind of had like that same style like Jessie Reyez too for a bit, and then she's actually kind of like rising up right now. She actually did the hook for Lotto's past single and all that too. So
yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
like when I think about like artists that kind of fit into that lane too, you Jessie Reyez, like Luke Calla, like I kind of like understand like that whole like sound that's like coming through too, and that's like definitely like a sound that needs to be put out more, that whole like, unique cue, but like raw, like in that sense too. So, and, I definitely like love that vibe from there and all that.
Thank you. Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, the Lotto song, I do remember her voice. It's really, really dope. Yeah.
Most definitely. Getting into part 2 right now, what would like a day like in the studio be like for you?
Day in the studio. So my musts, my musts for studio, I have to have a candle. Like it's not essential, but I usually bring a candle. There's something about candle. I don't know. I'm a little bit of a hippie. There's something about writing with a candle that just works better for me. I write a lot by like the feeling and not necessarily what I'm feeling, but what the instruments are giving me. And not to like jinx it, but I write really fast, and it's more of just like I feel like it just flows out of me. So a day in the studio is just me, a candle, and my pen and paper. I'm old school. I don't really like writing on my phone. I feel like the phone is so distracting, and someone's gonna message you or text you or call you, or Instagram's gonna happen. And I really prefer to like shut all that off and just be with my paper and pen. So that's really a day in the life in the studio with me.
No, 100% too. And I don't know if you kind of like blaze up or like get lit, like, like drink for a bit to kind of get in that element.
Get lit. No, I don't get lit in the studio. I think stems from really wanting to sing like the way that I want to picture it. I don't want to get lit and then be like, oh, I hate this.
True.
And yeah, like I smoke, but I love writing and smoking. Sometimes I find if I smoke and go record, then I'm in my head. I think too much about what I'm doing instead of the opposite. So, but I definitely smoke in the studio for sure.
Definitely. And I know like in some cases too, like some people like they'll have like different elements too. Like as you said, with the whole like candle situation to others, they would like have like tea in the studio to kind of get their voice like good to some people. Like they're not like fans of like having like other like people like in the studio too. So like even like in those studio rules, like in that sense too, like do you have like some things that you kind of like abide by to kind of make that space like comfortable for you like in that sense?
To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of having people in the studio, and I've had friends be like, "Oh, I want to come," and get their Instagram shots, right? But to me, it's more like my personality. I feel like I have to take care of you. It's sort of like when you want to go somewhere and you have a +1, and you're like, I kind of just want to go by myself because now I feel like I have to entertain you, and I'm here to work, so I don't really want to have to think about because. Most people who know this, like you're going to be bored. After you sit in the studio and you hear me sing the same section for a little bit, if that's not your vibe, you're probably going to eventually get bored. And then I'm going to have to think about like, are you okay? Are you hungry? Do you need this? And to me, like that's like going to work. Like I don't ask my friends if I go to work with them, right? So it's not something I abide by where it's like, you're never coming, but I prefer just me and the producer or engineer or someone I know.
Yeah.
And I've had people show up to the studio. It's not a huge deal, but I just prefer to be like, I prefer things intimate. So I would prefer it just be like a couple of us working on something.
Nah, most definitely, because I feel like it is like a certain importance too to kind of bring the best out of an artist too, because like when it's like a different type of energy too, like some people like they kind of flow from energy, like that energy can either change from one way to another. Like if it's like a positive type of energy, people like engaging, people like supporting, like then it should be no problem. But like when the vibe's just like not right in that sense too, like you kind of feel like I can't be in the like element right now. Like I can't be in the space. So I definitely understand too.
I'm a huge energy person. So you nailed it on the head.
Yeah,
the energy's got to be
too.
good for, especially for something so vulnerable like singing or writing. Yeah, for sure. It has to be like good energy, people, good vibes.
True. Have you like also tried like experimenting too with like different styles and all that? Like not just like even with genres, but like, being in a different environment too, like, recording outside or like recording at home and all that too.
Yeah. So one of my producers, Bad Look, I think we started off recording at his house, I believe like 2014 or something, a while ago. And I feel like with him, we record like wherever. Like it could be my living room, it could be Coalition Music, it could be a different studio. Like with him, it's very much like wherever we are, he's just really dope and he can just make it sound good, to be honest. But I honestly like dream about recording just in like a different place, like sitting in Spain somewhere and just like recording in a cool loft or like a cool environment like that. I definitely don't have a crutch where I need to go to the same studio every time. That me is long gone. But I think that it's important to go different places because you get to work with different people, different energy. And I think you also get to learn by collaborating with other people, you get to learn more because certain people are going to teach you different things or give you something different in the style that you're doing or just in the booth or, hey, maybe you should try this. This would be cool. So I love collaborating with people and kind of going to different places.
True, nah, most definitely. And to get more into like your singles too for a bit, because you explained it like in other like interviews with some of the songs too, but like with other songs like If I Follow, Little Demon, Weak in the Knees, which is like I think like one of your biggest tracks right now, and then also like Over Time and Go Slow. Like what were like the creative processes and inspirations for those?
So If I Follow, so my boyfriend passed away in 2000 and I don't want to mess up these dates. Sorry, 2018.
I think 18.
18.
Yeah.
Sorry, my boyfriend and my best friend passed away in the same
Sure.
within a year and a week of each other. So it was 2019. Sorry, that he passed away. And I was just really low. I believe it was like Thanksgiving or something. And I used to do Thanksgiving with his family and I just wasn't in a good headspace. So I cried in bed for like 17 hours. Like it was like a whole night and the whole day of me just like not getting out of my bed. And someone had sent me this instrumental. And I woke up and I actually felt like lighter, even though I had just had that whole like bout of, depression. But I felt a little lighter and I just felt like writing. So I actually wrote If I Follow in my bed. And it was originally about like if you're with somebody and they're going through something how that feels. And as I was listening to it back, I was like, this also kind of sounds like me talking to him, because there's a part where it says like, if you go up, I go down. And like, it just kind of like, it kind of poured out of me, and I looked back and there was a few ways I could actually have taken my own lyrics. So that was the inspiration for If I Follow. And Weak in the Knees, complete opposite. Weak in the Knees was me and my producer. I was at his house with the producer I just spoke about, and his mouse died. Sorry. Went down to get a charger from my car, and as I was walking down the stairs, it just was like, I'm weak in the knees. It just came into my head. And I came up the stairs and I had written the chorus, and I was like, we need to record this because it's just came out of nowhere. So Weak in the Knees was like a gift from someone else, because I always say that just came into my brain. I'm trying to think the other tracks you mentioned. Little Demon. Little Demon was the first song where I had switched over to Beauty in the Riot. And it originally was kind of about stage fright, which I used to have and still battle with sometimes. And just like the idea that everyone has a little demon, and whether that's, I talk about a few things in that song, whether that's like relationships or drinking or smoking or whatever it is for you. Like everyone has that little thing about them that you kind of want to like shake. And at the end, it's sort of like, okay, this is just a part of me. So that's what Little Demon was about.
True.
Yeah.
And then I think also like over time in like Go Slow as well too. You could like explain it like briefly if you want to, but if you want to give like a full like in-depth analysis of like those styles, like feel free to go ahead.
Sure. So Overtime is really about a girl being at home waiting for her man and just being like, yeah. I'm rolling your joints. I'm, old school. Don't hate me, but I'm cleaning the house. I'm doing the, the old school kind of things. And I'm just waiting, and I just can't wait for him to get home. And it was just kind of that idea. I worked with someone named Lefty on that song, and he's known me since the very, very beginning. And we hadn't had a chance to actually do a song together. And that was after Overtime special to me, because I had writer's block for like 3 or 4 years. And some people talk about how like writer's block doesn't exist for them, and like kudos to them. It definitely struck me. And he's like, he put on the beat and he left me a spliff and he left the room. I guess because he knew like my old ways, and I just smoked and I just started writing. And that was the first song that I had gotten out of me for a couple of years. So Overtime was always kind of special because that was the first one, and I haven't stopped writing since. So shout out to Lefty for getting me out of my, he's like, you don't need me. You're good. I'm just going to leave you in here with some music. So that's where that came from. Go Slow was about like an on and off toxic past, fling relationship type idea. And then it just kind of spiraled into like a fun kind of dancey, almost like more of a dance upbeat song. I don't really have like an in-depth analysis for that one, but I do have a really fun remix coming with another, actually, I'll just drop it right here. Trey Mission is going to be on that song for a remix. So I'm getting excited about that.
Nah, most definitely. And correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned that you directed your own music videos, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how did that come about, and like what was like that process like? Curating like the best music videos and like visualizing the best aspect of your songs, like in like visual wise and all that.
This is kind of a funny story. So when I was going by Yasmin Soul, apparently I was directing those videos too. I had no idea. I put in my head, my director, Bando on everything. And he was like, when after Little Demon, he's like, that you directed this, right? And I had no idea, because in my mind, the director was holding the camera. The director was, and I do explain in depth, like sometimes what I want and angles, but the concepts are mine and I'm still editing with them. And he's like, you've actually directed this video. I don't think you realize. And I have to like props to him, because I think a lot of times women in the industry, we're quiet in the sense that we don't necessarily know the role that we've done. So I was like, maybe it's creative direction, maybe it's this. He's like, no, you've directed this video. And by the way, you directed the other 3 videos. And then I kind of clicked to me, and I was like, well, thank you for telling me that, because someone else may not have told me that and just taken the credit. And once I kind of put that director hat on, it definitely changed the way I was looking at everything I'm doing going forward. Again, being someone who loves acting, went to art school, I absolutely love directing and I love film. I get that from my mom. Like, I'll rewatch a movie for the scene or for the way a certain angle was shot. Like, I get that all from my mom. And I think it changed the way I looked at women in the industry being behind the camera and how it's not done nearly enough. And as you mentioned earlier, perspectives. Everyone has a different perspective. Women, men, people in general are going to have different perspectives. So I think it's important to like allow those, like all types of people to be doing different roles, because everyone's going to have a different eye on something. So once I started really realizing, hey, you are directing, then I just kind of took it full force and took it more seriously. And I think my most recent video for Go Slow was like the favorite one I've ever directed. But yeah, that's a huge, I just want to see more women behind the camera. I really do. So.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree too. And I think like even like for Toronto too, because when I look at like Toronto music videos too that are not like curated by like SoCan or Factor or for like other like formations, like the ball has been dropping like so low for like music videos nowadays in Toronto. Like, you know, you get the typical Toronto music video where it's a condo and it's like people with their homeboys and all that with the mandem just like linking up and all that too, and then you get like, you know, a 1-2 like video model right there too, and that's just like for the Toronto male rappers like in some cases too, but like for other artists too, it's like you see a creative edge, and that's like maybe like one in like maybe 25 or 50 that are kind of doing it. Like I could give like maybe like an example too, like Toby, like his music videos are like mad lit and all that, and
Yep.
I think also who else?
He's dope. I love
Yeah.
Toby.
Yeah, I have to figure out more too. I think Hawaii Mighty as well too, and then like also, you know, like as you said, like Trey Mission and all that. You know, like a lot of them are gonna have like more like better and more creative music videos than the typical one right now. And like I want to ask more about your opinion on all that. Like, how do you feel about the aspect of Toronto music videos nowadays? Like whether it's like mainstream or like non-mainstream.
To be honest, I think like I totally understand what you are saying about the mandem and the condo and the typical thing, but I think that a lot of times it's just that there's not a plan. I think sometimes people just go into the video as like a cool concept, and I think, and that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. There's room for that. There's a whole generation that's gonna love that, and I don't dislike it. I just think that for me, when I write a song and I record a song, I already see the video in my head. So for me, it's like now I have to do that. Which sounds great, but it's also kind of like annoying because like it's another thing that I'm like, okay, now I have to do this specifically. I don't think the Toronto music video scene is like lacking, to be honest. I think right now, everybody, podcasts, music videos, everybody's in this race for content. Yeah. So I think there's also a lot of pressure on artists to do so many things, which is really awesome, but maybe not every artist wants to come up with the concept, and maybe not every artist has the funds, because we mentioned Factor and these things, but not everybody's getting that, right? So maybe all they can do is go to their homeboys like condo. But I think I've seen a big pullback on videos in general, because people are like, oh, they're not watching them on YouTube. Even with me, I'm told like just keep it strict to like your TikTok and your Instagram content.
Not true.
So I think that sometimes that's why we're seeing like a bit where people aren't really putting out music videos as often, because there is no much music playing videos all day long, and there isn't really a platform for them. But for me personally, I think music videos are so important, because it's another form of content, yes, but I think it tells the story of who you are as an artist. So I definitely don't want to hate on anyone's like condo mandem video, because I think depending on the song, hey, that's, you know what I mean? That's the vibe.
Yeah.
And a lot of those videos get crazy views, and those songs get great streams. It's just, I think for me, it's like I like to plan kind of what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And curate it differently. And I think that just comes, every artist has their own vision, right?
Yeah.
So if their vision is they want to have a lit like party, and that's what the song is, and that's what they want to show, you know what I mean? But I think there's a lot of good videos out there. I think we don't get to see them because the race for content is so crazy, and there's just so much that we're only gonna see, you know, what we see.
I think the last good music video that kind of had that same style, Griselda Blanco and all that too, like it was like a Toronto anthem, still to this day and all that too, same style, but it kind of had like a unique aspect too for a bit. And I think, you know, we could even like go through it like on another day and all that too, but like I think like that's like one thing that I'll plug in right now. But
yeah, one of my favorite videos of all time is A$AP Rocky's LSD.
Oh, true.
Like that video, for anyone who hasn't seen that video, you have to watch it. It's so creatively done, and it's just such a cool concept. So that's like my all-time favorite music video.
True. Likewise. And getting on to like the next topic right here. Tell me more about your performing experience as like a solo artist, and like what was that like, performing like all over like the city in that sense.
I used to hate performing, which is probably something I shouldn't tell people, but I used to hate performing. I used to get really bad stage fright, and I pushed myself to just kind of get over that in a sense where I also love dancing. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bring some dancers. I'm going to feel like a little more comfortable. I like the way it looks aesthetically. It's also me. So it's more of my personality. But more recently, I've really been like focusing on my jazzy R&B stuff. And I want to like be able to just do that more intimately the way I would in a studio with like a candle and just chill. So I think playing a lot of shows last year really helped me like just kind of break out of that shell and realize that the way people are playing shows now is also very different than the way people were playing shows 15 years ago, where there's backing tracks. There's so much more going on now that I would say helps a lot of artists. It can hinder depending on how much you use it and how much you're really singing live and all that. But I think playing SOBs in New York was probably one of the funnest and scariest things for me. But I went into my Just Say Yes kind of year. And when they offered me a show in New York on a stage where like all these greats have played, I was so excited. But I think taking those leaps, and even though it's scary, it's like that's exciting. And just being more prepared for it. After I did last year, I became a lot more prepared for that show because I forced myself to do other shows. Oh, sure. So I've actually learned to love performing live, but I, for a long time, just didn't like it at all. But yeah, I think that it's growth. Like there's no really artist development anymore. You're kind of just thrown in and you develop as everybody's watching. So I think that that's an area that I feel like I've developed a lot in the last year.
Because nowadays too, like music, it's like, be lit on TikTok and all that too. Like if you can make it within that 1 minute, like, you're a superstar one day too, because it's the whole like attention span and all that. So it's like, you need to fit into like that whole like 1 minute for the attention span and all that to kind of get people like going for a bit too. And like, like, hey, if you could like rock a stage and all that, like it'll be lit, but people don't see like the downsides that like not everyone's gonna like listen to the same stuff or like kind of see you like live if the music really doesn't like match nowadays too, because there are some people that are seeing like old concerts nowadays too, like from like old artists like Pink Floyd and all that, or Beyonce, or like also like Seal, or like who else, Elton John, because they've made music that's like very like timeless in time and all that too. Like, but when we compare it to other people that are like big right now but aren't really selling as much because of the music that they have, sometimes too you kind of question if that's like the right approach to them. Like, should this artist like, and I think it's like also with the pandemic too and all that, because with artists, those 2 years, like 2010, 2020, and then 2021, people were like kind of like shelved in for a bit to stay at their homes. So they're putting those same people that kind of blew up around that time at these like big venues, but then when that return doesn't come, like then it's kind of like questionable for a bit too. So yeah, I definitely like agree like in that sense, so
I think there's so many factors into that too, where ticket prices are just insane. And I'm someone who loves to go to concerts. I'll drop money on concerts.
Oh, true.
But even I'm like, ooh, I can't do that. Like ticket prices are absolutely nuts right now. And like that's something that I feel like we have to talk about. And like, I don't know, I don't plan on getting sponsored by Ticketmaster. So I'm just gonna say it. Ticketmaster is crazy right now, and it's unfortunate because it's really, I think it's also like hindering what people's perception. Oh, nobody really wants to go to this show. And it's like, no, by the time that they've added all their taxes, people can barely afford groceries in this city alone. Yeah. So never mind the rest of the world, right? Yeah. So I just think there's a lot going on. And like you said, the pandemic's adding to people trying to make back the money they lost. Yeah. But I think the ticket prices are a huge reason that I've been to, and I won't name names of artists, but I've been to 3 or 4 shows that were sold out and they're not sold out. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, so we're trying to make it look like they're sold out because they're not. There's tickets here. I'm here at the door and I can buy tickets. Yeah. So I think that there's a few things at play there. And I think that unfortunately the pandemic and the financial situation of the world and Ticketmaster is all adding to that as well.
Nah, 100% too, because I've read like some reports that I think Beyonce concert tickets were like what, like 5 bands, like 7 bands for like a 100 like seating level and all that, and that's like also kind of crazy too. And like even like there's one kid that tried to go to Travis Scott's concert in Egypt that's kind of postponed right now. There was like claims
Oh
that
yes.
he sold his house to kind of get the tickets, and there's like a lot of crazy things that can happen, like even with the whole Taylor Swift situation, because with scalping, with like third party buyers and all that,
The
like
bots.
it kind of happens from there for to kind of make the prices like gouge like a little bit more, and you know it's hard for even people to buy it too, you know, to kind of like have it in a better reception than to like also like save money as well too. And I think that's something that we do really need to talk about, like maybe like in the future too, like to see like what could work out from there to kind of change the way of life when it comes to like live performances and events in that sense too. So
Yeah, I agree. Like I Beyonce's one person where I get it, because you're seeing Beyonce, and even though some people may not realize this, that's like one of the highest levels of performers in the world, who's put in all this time, and the dancer, like there's so much in her show that I understand. Like I can understand the prices more on that level, and she's gonna sell them. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, Beyonce, go off. You know what I mean? Do your thing
Yeah,
for
no.
sure. But I think on with some of the smaller performers, it's only hurting them because they don't have any real weight to make the prices lower.
No.
So I think a lot of artists are talking about that. Like, we put our tickets up for $50. How come they're $150 now?
It's pretty interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll definitely speak more about that like later on in the pod. But I wanted to ask too, with the music that you make now versus before, do you feel that there was like a significant like change for the better in that sense?
Yeah. So you mean like from Yasmin Soul to Beauty in the Riot?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I think that Yasmin Soul was me just having fun. And even though I made music videos and the producer didn't change really much, my main producer, I think that I was doing it for me just to have fun. And I played shows, and it was like kind of getting my feet wet in a sense. And then when I lost my best friend Bianca and my boyfriend at the time, Reed, I didn't feel like the same person. Like I just didn't even feel like that person existed anymore. And I found a lot of beautiful moments, like sitting, waiting for the funeral to start. I had like a butterfly fly around me and was like hitting my face and just like all over, just moments that are so special in such a dark time. That's where Beauty in the Riot came from. It wasn't about beauty being like a beautiful person. It was about beauty in life, and finding like these beautiful moments in a riot or in a situation where it's like it's not supposed to be beautiful, but you're still, you know, finding something positive in it. And that's sort of how my name came. And the music changed because I've been through a lot, and I was like, I want to take these experiences and these two people I held so dear to me, and I want to like chase my dreams because they can't chase theirs. And so it became more of like, I'm doing it for us. And so I think that that's why my name changed at all. And that's why I feel like the music has changed, because I just grew more because I went through more as a person.
100% too. And you know, it has like elevated like a little bit more with like acting and all that too. And you actually had 2 roles, actually, one in Poser and then one in Drowning. I think one's a movie and then like one's like a TV episode as well too. So, and what was like that experience like when you auditioned for those roles, like being in those like projects, and like, you know, the impact that it had for you like around that time?
Yeah, so Poser was something I auditioned. I think I found it myself on like Kijiji years ago, and it was a Rogers TV series for 3 main characters, and I auditioned and I got the role of like the main girl, and so I was like, this is awesome. Like it was so fun, and I loved acting. And actually, funny enough, Mina Masad, who was just played Aladdin in Disney's Aladdin, was in Poser. So, you know, shout out to him, because he went very, very far and really took it. A few people in Poser have done really well in their acting career, but I loved it. I love being on camera. The only reason I really slowed down that is because I love music. I love dance. I love directing. I love, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was like, listen, you got to pick one and just focus on it. And you can always do other stuff later. But I think when you're trying to do 7 things, you're never going to do one really well because you're trying to do too many things. So I actually stopped acting just for that reason. So I was like, let me focus on my music. But every time I watch a TV show, every movie, like I miss it so much. Like it's in my gut. Like I really want to get back into it, but the timing is everything, and whatever the universe brings, it'll bring. So that was Poser. And then Drowning was a little darker. Like my role was darker. I played a woman named Tammy who like was a drug addict and didn't take care of her kids and was in like this group discussing that. So those totally different roles. But again, a really, really awesome director and just like a fun film to be part of.
Nah, likewise. And I don't know if it like kind of like led to other opportunities that you might have to like pause for a bit too, because I know with some people like when they build their like resume, especially within Canadian acting, you know, there's like opportunities to be in shows at CBC, like, you know, like I think Hudson and Rex, or like, you know, even being in like a mini series, or like even being in Degrassi too. So those opportunities like happening like around that time, or
Well, yeah, I had an agent and I was auditioning for roles. I auditioned for a role in Degrassi and a role and a few things on CBC. But I went to school for journalism and I was actually like working in radio at CBC, or interning, sorry, in radio at CBC. So I kind of wasn't as focused. Like I was there all day, and to be an actor, anyone who knows anything about film or has done acting, it's like you can't have a life during the day because you have to go to auditions, and if you book it, you have to book time off work. So it's really hard to have a day job. You sort of have to be in a flexible situation. And so I wasn't able to just keep doing that. I had to kind of pick what I wanted to do. But I did audition for quite a few things. And again, like I loved it, and I'm sure I'll be back at it at some point.
True, not 100% too. And you actually have like an upcoming single like right now. So tell me more about that in terms of like the creative process and inspiration and what fans and like listeners can expect.
Yeah. So Betty No No came out today. I'm super hyped about it. The production on it is like a pop, almost like garage UK feel. So that came about. I just loved the idea of like that kind of sound, and Bad Look, my producer, just was like built it so beautifully, and we kind of built from scratch when working together. So I was just writing as he was building and like kind of asking for things to drop out. And I think it's really like a nice arc. I think for me, I think it might be the best song I've ever written. So I'm really excited for that and to shoot the video, and that'll come soon. But yeah, Betty No No is out today. And like I said, I think it's the best song I've written to date. So I'm excited to see how it's received. And it's like a fun summer play in your car, like pop. It's a banger. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not usually this confident, but like this song is dope. So
yeah, nah, likewise, and we're gonna put it on our playlist soon, so you could like check it out like on the link below, like when people like tap in, like when it's released too. And yeah, like also like tap in like on the monthly playlist too. Like we always update that too. So for people like watching or listening, like tap in right there and all that, you know. But get back onto topic right now. You know, you dealt with like a lot of like trauma like in your life too, with your father like passing away, and then also two of your loved ones like passing away, your boyfriend and then your best friend too. So it could like deteriorate like your mental health like in a way in that sense too. So in that sense, how do you deal with like your mental health as a person in your position, with everything going on in your life, with family, with loss, you know, with dealing with music, with dealing with work and all that? Have you ever felt at times it could be like overwhelming, like going on in your life in that sense too? Or
definitely, I've definitely had my bout of mental illness. I had like I mentioned the depression earlier with If I Follow. They said I had PTSD after my dad passed away. And I had like a suicidal situation or episode, I guess I would say, where I actually drove myself to the hospital because I just felt like not in control of what I wanted to do. And it was really scary. So I'm a big believer in therapy, and not necessarily like one therapist doesn't work for everyone. One type of therapy doesn't work for everyone, but like continuously trying to find somebody or something that works for you. I think having music as an outlet is like a gift. I think everybody should journal, even if you hate reading or hate writing. I think just streamlined journaling is something that I think I'm really big on. And I actually just got one of my friends a journal last week that I gave, because I think just writing down all of these things that get trapped in our head, even we don't know what we're feeling sometimes or why we're upset. We just feel away. And sometimes I think just writing everything and getting it out is so key. So for me, I'm a big believer in therapy. But I know therapy scares people because they don't want to sit and tell someone something and they're just kind of stiff on the other side of the room. And was my issue too. And I found a therapist that actually said to me, "What do you need from therapy?" before we ever started. And I was like, "Oh, this person makes sense." Like, because everyone needs something different. So whatever therapy is for someone, I do still believe that like talking to somebody is key. For me, grief therapy was like a group that happened at the funeral home that I went to for quite some time. And it really did help, just knowing other people kind of feel the same way. It's the same as if you're sad and you want to listen to a sad song and someone's like, why? You're just going to cry. It's like, I just need to know someone else has felt this crappy too, you know? So yeah, I think those are the things that are really important. And music is just like a wonderful outlet that I'm lucky to have. But whatever that is to somebody, I think leaning into those outlets and also cutting out toxic people that out of your life, whether it's family or friends that are not going to be there for you or not going to say things that are really going to make you feel any better is also key, because you have to protect yourself first. So
100% too. And I think like even like taking breaks as well too, you know, like when you have that open opportunity, just like go out, you know, do your thing, like decompress, you know. It's kind of like a interesting like way to kind of be back in the right mood that you could be, and then like get back to work on that. And I feel like nowadays too, we don't really realize that until our body starts to depreciate and, you know, lose like in value in that sense too, because if we put like 100% and 10% like on what we're doing right now with work, with content, with other things too, with commitments, you know, sometimes there could be something that could kind of like slow us down or like lead us to like a bad edge and all that too. So having that break and having that time to kind of relax, like vibe out, it's like something good. Like whether it's like, you know, going for a massage or going for a walk or eating good or like, you know, going on vacation, like anything can work out either way too, you know. So
yeah, I agree with all of that.
no, most definitely. And you know, social media nowadays, like what are your thoughts on it?
How so? Like just where we're headed with social media, or
Like with what's going
as
on
an
right
artist?
I wouldn't even say just like an artist, just like as a regular person as well too, you know, seeing like these photos and these contents, and it's like, you know, I'm very like, you know, you get like very depressed on like what you're seeing and all that too, you know, like because like sometimes too we could post something on social media and the reality is like we could have something that's great, but technically we're not really happy and we're not really there. It's just something that is like a temporary like high, like in that feeling, you know, with the whole like dopamine situation. You kind of do something to kind of have like that lustful feeling, you know, like an energy within competition, within drive and all that. But then once that's released, you know, then we kind of get like that whole disgusting, like whole like
Yeah,
tiresome like feeling and all that too. So
right.
it's like
That's a good one. I did post something, I think it was last year, where I was like trying to make this song and I was just crying because the song was so like personal, and I ended up posting it. And there's always gonna be people that are like, why are you videotaping yourself crying? You know what I mean? There's always someone complaining on social media somewhere. But it's like, I think it's important as a person, and yes, also as an artist, to be like, not everything, not every studio session is this glamorous thing, and not everyone's life is Instagram. Like, Instagram's not actually real. I've been doing this the last 2 days. It's interesting you mentioned this. I've actually been deleting Instagram off of my page. So even though I have to post, and I posted my song today, then I just deleted Instagram as the app totally. And it's not because I hate Instagram. It's that my thumb will always click Instagram to open it. And I think a lot of us do that, even when you're like, oh, what was I doing? How did I get on Instagram? Or whatever that app is to you that's like kind of addicting. And when I don't have it there, I won't click on it unless I absolutely need to. And it's very rare that I absolutely need to go on Instagram. So I've been noticing like just doing that throughout the day, and then maybe at night when I want to unwind, I can open it. I think doing little things like that is going to start to help, especially when there's more and more and more apps like Threads. And I actually like Threads because there's less visuals. So it's like I can just sort of read, and I find it right now, because it's new, it's still pretty positive. But I think really starting to realize how much time you're spending on it and why you're on it. I have friends that'll be like, oh, I'm taking a break. And I'm like, that must be nice. But I don't really have that luxury in today's society with artists. If you're not like doing anything current, like you're forgotten about, and whoever was following you doesn't care anymore. So I think taking breaks is key. I think I'm grateful that this came out when I was older. I don't know how young high school kids or even younger are going to adapt to everything we're doing. And even me, I spoke about this recently, but there was this picture of this like beautiful girl, and I remember scrolling being like, wow, this girl's so pretty, like I wish I looked like that. I kept scrolling, and I went back, I'm like, is this girl AI? Because she actually kind of, when I looked at it again, she actually kind of didn't look real. And I was thinking that is such a scary thought because we already, women and men were already competing with these fake images. Now we're competing with a person that's not even really a person. So I know, I think there's definitely going to be some discussions around that. It's kind of we're in an interesting time. It could go either way. And I'm grateful that we're having conversations like this one where we're at least acknowledging how people are really feeling after they get likes or after they don't get enough likes or after so-and-so doesn't follow them back or et cetera. Because it does affect our mental health. And I think especially for younger people, I think.
No, 100%. And I think this is like kind of like what I want to point out for like the last part too. It's like TikTok right now for these like new generation of kids and teenagers and young adults, it's the new Instagram right now, because when we look at it at our time, we only have Twitter and like Instagram too. So that's like what we're using right now, from what we're posting to what we're kind of completing with and all that. So for them, like with TikTok, it's like something that, it's like unique, easy to follow and all that, and kind of more creative. So I think like that's going to be like the new wave right now, even whether you're not posting and all that. So pretty much.
Yeah, I think TikTok, the cool thing about TikTok is it's really what you make of it. If you want to only see videos of farms or meditation or something positive, you will. But if you want to see the other stuff, you will. So I think people have to remember that when they go to search something or watch something on TikTok, that algorithm is just going to be like, oh, you like seeing negative things? Okay, we're just going to show you negative things. So I think it's like programming your brain in a sense to make sure you're watching what you want to see more of and not what is just like a wow factor or a shock factor.
No, 100% too. And just we have like some of these like a couple topics left for a bit too. But how do you feel about the Toronto Canadian music scene right now? Do you feel that there should be some changes on where the scene should go to, or do you feel like it's fine the way it is?
Because I grew up in the Toronto scene, it's kind of interesting to watch it grow and evolve and be acknowledged in other countries way more than it was back then, even though we had the same amount of talent. I would say one thing I really want to keep seeing, and there is bouts of it now, is community, and less of the like, okay, you have to leave. Again, we talked about Jesse Reyes. Jesse Reyes, everyone else that you could name in Toronto has had to leave for us to pay attention to them. And then when they come back, oh, sold out show. So I know that happens everywhere. It's not just Toronto, but I would love to see more community of people actually supporting their own people, and not everything is competition. And if you build across instead of trying to like always reach up, you'll actually build a stronger foundation. When you look at the Timbalands and the Missy Elliott's and people who really like work together and built something together and, held each other's hand and built up. I think that that's something that Toronto is lacking, and I'm seeing it more now. And I'm hoping that that's like the actual trend and it's not just a right now thing. I would love to see more community just amongst artists across the board.
Yeah, no, most definitely. We talked about this like in a private chat and all that, but I definitely would like to see you like open up for like Jessie Reyes or like even like co-headline with her and all that. So I know you said like that was like kind of like your dream tour as well too. So like I think we can like manifest it.
Manifest it.
Yeah.
I would love that. Opening for her is definitely a dream.
Most definitely. And just with this other, I think we already explained this too earlier, but with your father being a multi-Juno Award winner who's toured with the likes of James Brown, multiple releases under the band's name that did well commercially and critically acclaimed-wise up until his death, do you feel that his legacy is already solidified in Canadian music, or do you feel like there's more to be done?
I feel like his legacy is solidified. I feel like it's not written down. So for me right now, like one of my, side projects that I haven't told too many people about is like really working towards making sure certain things are in place. Because as far as I know, and again, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Jack Soul is the longest running R&B group in Canadian history. Things like that need to be documented. So I think for me, his legacy is definitely intact, but I think actually writing things down, whether that be, halls of fame or whether that be certain boards having his name in certain places, I think that has to happen. And that's something that I definitely will be pushing for outside of, beauty, but as me as a person, as his daughter, because I think the history is really important. And I think it's important to Canadian music history. It's important to Black Canadian music history in general that, that happened. And I think there's more to do in terms of the paperwork side of things, but in terms of himself, I think he's definitely done a lot. In 39 years, he did a lot. So
Oh, most definitely. And do you have any like regrets in your life, or do you regret nothing?
you know what's funny about that is I'm sure there's something small that I regret, but I'm very grateful that I don't. And I will say this because we spoke about trauma and loss and stuff. I believe in like telling people you love them, taking pictures with people, all that kind of stuff. And it's so key because you don't know how much time you have here. And not even to get like that dark and deep. I just think living life and being kind to people is so underrated. And I say this a lot, but like the most gangster thing you could be is kind. So I just think luckily I don't have regrets because I had really great parents, but you know, I'm sure there's some small regrets here and there, but I don't have anything like major that I wish I had changed. And I'm grateful. Hopefully the next 50 years is the same.
All right, nah, most definitely. And I know we're kind of short like on time for a bit too, but do you have like free songs in your catalog that you'd like to recommend for people who want to like know more about you for the first time?
Sure. So I do R&B and like a jazzy style, and I do pop alternative. So to kind of like touch base on all those flavors, I would say Honey and Paper. I would say the song that came out today, Betty No No, for sure. And Little Demon, because Little Demon is the one that everyone always reminds me of and tells me they love. So those are the three.
Most definitely. And what do you have coming up next aside from your single? And do you have any like closing remarks you'd like to say?
Coming up next, I just have a lot more music. I'm working towards an EP that's going to be show more of my jazzy R&B side because I'm doing a lot of pop alternative right now, so people can kind of get that vibe. But I definitely want them to see both sides of my music and my styles. And closing remarks, I don't have anything to say other than like this has been really dope. Like thank you for having me, and yeah, I loved the questions and the conversation. So
Yeah, nah. I mean, Beauty in the Riot, you know, thank you for coming by too and all that. And I also had like this one thing too. I don't know if you're gonna see Barbie or Oppenheimer next and all that. Like, I don't know if you're like a movie head and all
yes,
that.
Yes, I am.
True.
Yes.
So like, I know like.
Trying to see Barbie tonight, actually. That's really funny you said that.
I actually just saw it just yesterday too, and you know it's actually pretty lit from there. I don't want to give any spoilers, but it's all for the culture, British Commonwealth. You know the four: Reynolds, Lou, Dua Lipa, Robbie. I think another one too, but yeah, like you got to support the Commonwealth, you know. But but Beauty in the Riot, you know, thank you for coming by. You know, sharing your story, sharing your own story, and you know, explaining like what you've done like in that time and all that within music, within culture, and with everything else too. And we hope to have you back and all that too. And you know, this is episode 45 of TLOY Talks with Josh, also known as Yashu. As mentioned before, you could see it on YouTube, but along with Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, much more. It'll be in the link in the bio, like when it's dropped and all that. And yeah, you know, give it a thumbs up or like 5 stars, like if you're on Apple Podcasts and all that. And yeah, you know, I'm signing off right now.